Coming up on 5 Minute News. Georgia governor signs GOP election bill to restrict voting. Buttigieg pitches once-in-a-generation infrastructure fix. And Suez Canal could be blocked for weeks by beached cargo ship. It's Friday, March 26. I'm Anthony Davis. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp drew protests on Thursday as he signed into law a sweeping Republican-sponsored overhaul of state elections that includes new restrictions on voting by mail and greater legislative control over how elections are run. Democrats and voting rights groups say the law will disproportionately disenfranchise voters of color. It is one of a wave of GOP-backed election bills introduced in states around the country after former President Donald Trump stoked false claims that fraud led to his 2020 election defeat. President Joe Biden called such GOP efforts un-American and sick during a news conference on Thursday. The Republican changes to voting law in Georgia follows record-breaking turnout that led to Democratic victories in the presidential contest and 2 U.S. Senate runoffs in the once reliably red state. Kemp signed the bill less than 2 hours after it cleared the Georgia General Assembly. The bill passed the state House 100-75. Republicans in the legislature supported it. Democrats were opposed. At his first news conference, Biden harshly criticized Republican moves to limit voting rights. In Georgia, Democratic State Senate Majority Leader Gloria Butler called the efforts by Republicans voter suppression tactics, unlike anything we've seen since the Jim Crow era, Butler added. As Kemp delivered his remarks, he was interrupted by a commotion before a live stream of the event cut out. Democratic State Representative Park Cannon, who is black, was arrested by Capitol Police after knocking gently on the door of the governor's office during his remarks. Cannon was handcuffed with her arms behind her back, being forcibly removed from the Capitol by 2 white male officers, one on each arm. She was charged with felony obstruction of law enforcement, punishable by 1 to 5 years in prison, and with disrupting a session of the General Assembly. She was being held at the Fulton County Jail. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg called for a once-in-a-generation infrastructure investment on Thursday that would address a massive backlog in needed improvements for the nation's roads, bridges, and transit systems, while also tackling climate change. Buttigieg avoided specifics on how it would be paid for, but said the current level of investment poses a threat to our collective future. Across the country, we face a $1 trillion backlog of needed repairs and improvements, with hundreds of billions of dollars in good projects already in the pipeline, he said. We see other countries pulling ahead of us, with consequences for strategic and economic competition. By some measures, China spends more on infrastructure every year than the US and Europe combined. The hearing exposed some of the obstacles that President Joe Biden's administration will face as Congress takes up a public works build-out, testing Biden's campaign promise to reach across the political aisle to address national problems. Buttigieg's appearance before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee came as Joe Biden has been meeting with economic advisors on an emerging $3 trillion package of investments on infrastructure and domestic programs. He is set to release details in a speech in Pittsburgh next week. A huge container ship blocking the Suez Canal like a beached whale may take weeks to free, the salvage company said, as officials stopped all ships entering the channel on Thursday in a new setback for global trade. The 400-meter Ever Given, almost as long as the Empire State Building is high, is blocking transit in both directions through one of the world's busiest shipping channels for oil and refined fuels, grain, and other trade linking Asia and Europe. Late on Thursday, dredgers were still working to remove thousands of tons of sand from around the ship's bow. The Suez Canal Authority said earlier that 9 tugs were working to move the vessel, which got stuck diagonally across the single-lane southern stretch of the canal on Tuesday morning amid high winds and a dust storm. "We can't exclude it might take weeks depending on the situation," said the CEO of a Dutch company, one of 2 rescue teams trying to free the ship. A total of 206 large container ships, tankers carrying oil and gas, and bulk vessels hauling grain have backed up at either end of the canal, creating one of the worst shipping jams seen for years. The blockage comes on top of the disruption to world trade already caused in the past year by COVID-19, with trade volumes hit by high rates of ship cancellations, shortages of containers, and slower handling speeds at ports. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.